Welcome to Château de Vaux in Champagne region. The estate is located in the Aube department. It's a chateau that I bought in 2015 and which has just completed its major restoration phase. We've redone the roofs and frames, and today we're going to take a look at the interior, which is in fact the continuation of the project since we've just started a major restoration of the salons and ground floor rooms. Let me take you through the various stages of this restoration. Since 2015, we've been concentrating on saving the chateau in the literal sense of the word by taking care of the roofs, the structural work and anything else that might leak due to bad weather. As the chateau had been abandoned since the 30s, it was imperative to give priority to the structural work. The scaffolding have been removed about a month ago, and it's an important moment when visitors and people who know Vaux will come back and discover a completely transformed place. And the aim is also to show them that the project doesn't stop there and that we're now restoring, thanks to the money from visitors and all the activities on the estate, the salons and all these rooms that I'm going to show you. In this case, there are 3 of them, and we've started on the most important one. Before showing you all these rooms, I'd just like to remind you that the facades and roofs have been completely redone. It was a comprehensive project costing almost 3 million euros, 6 years of uninterrupted work. And for this project, we were extremely fortunate to receive substantial state aid, even though we're classified as a historical monument. Several state departments have helped us with over 50% of the cost of this project. So, out of 3 million euros, there's still a big chunk to be financed. But it's the Chateau's activities that make it all possible. And that's why we're taking care of the rooms, to show our visitors that the work is progressing well and that there's things in this chateau which has now been saved. So here we are in the Grand Salon. This is the main room where guests are received. It's also the room where the finest paintings and furniture are displayed. From the 17th to the 19th century, this was a truly central room in the life of a home and a family. So we tried to draw a little inspiration from decors that were no longer present. Everything you see around me isn't painted yet. So it's easy to see that these are new parts that we've made and added. But this room had been ravaged by time. It had been looted in the 30s, when the chateau was abandoned. And that's when all the decor was sold. So the parquet floor, the fireplaces, the woodwork. So we had to recompose the entire Grand Salon, which is really the main room, from nothing more than an archive photo. So we drew inspiration from the neighboring rooms we're going to see next, which have just been restored. And these rooms still had some rare 18th century decor. And by keeping these decorations and restoring them, we decided to duplicate the model of the existing fragments of woodwork to reproduce them in the adjoining room and in all the other rooms. It was the best way to avoid making mistakes. I think that when you do a good restoration, you have to start from a real element. The real element is to be found in the next room. So that's what inspired us. And woodworkers and staffers copied these large wood paneling panels you see here on the lower part, made of wood. This was very common in the 18th century. For the upper sections, we used the staff model. This is plaster molded with molasses to create very rigid panels or trims. So we designed the model, the moldings, the width, everything. We designed everything ourselves. Then the craftsmen went to work in the workshop. This is the end of a project that lasted about 4 months. We'll be finishing in 2 weeks. You can see that there's still a lot of work to do, but nevertheless, we've done the hardest part. All the woodwork. Here we have the doors which will be installed next week. The big double doors, 3.5 meters high. To give you an idea, this project, which is in the main room of the chateau, costs around 100,000 euros. 100,000 euros is the cost of redoing all the materials, woodwork, decorations, fireplaces and mirrors, plus the purchase of a chandelier, and also the gilding on the ceiling, etc. So with a few relics, we were able, I think, to return the chateau and this salon to their primitive 18th, 19th century state. The furniture also respects the passage of more recent years, which is very important and will be very important. In particular, there will be a grand piano from the 20s. There will be Louis XVI period furniture. There will be Regency period sofas. The aim is to mix it all up a bit, to show that Vaux has always been a busy, lived-in family home. And that, in the end, the 100 years of neglect have had very little impact on the interior, which is not true though. We've come a long way. But the ultimate aim is to show that the house hasn't been ransacked. So here, in the large living room, you can see that we benefit from quite extraordinary light since there's a double exposure, northeast on one side, southwest on the other. There are 6 large windows, almost 4 meters high, which bring in light all day long. And we have these 2 large mirrors that were bought from an antique dealer in Paris at the Saint-Ouen flea market. They're a pair of large, late 19th century overmantel inspired by a Regency model, which was also the period of the Chateau. Something quite simple, but with an original color that we'll be drawing on to redo all the woodwork. Here, we're going to position mirrors with a mercury effect. In other words, we're going to slow fire them in a local workshop that makes glass and stained glass. We'll then age these mirrors to give the impression that they've always been there. Just below, you have a Napoleon III era fireplace that hasn't been here for a long time, since it was stolen after the war. And this mantel, according to the owners who sold me the chateau in 2015, was found at the Belgian border by a dealer who had stolen it. It really escaped the worst. And finally, the fireplace was recovered and stored in the stables for 50 years under lock and key. And when I bought the chateau, I was given the key to this storeroom where there were still 2 or 3 historical elements of the chateau. As it's from the Napoleon III period, it dates from after the chateau was built. But nonetheless, you've got this whole cast iron counter heart, which is sublime and shows hunting ornaments, trophies, and scenes from mythology. It also had the advantage of heating, I think, a large part of the room at the time. So we put back an original element. It's very hard when you're restoring a chateau and you've got nothing inside to find the pieces that were in the room originally. So that's the only thing that's original. Everything else has been redesigned, the ceiling restored, the gilding redone, and so we'll be installing all the rest of the decor over the next few days. After the Grand Salon, we enter the Petit Salon. This beautiful room has retained its 18th century decor. You should have seen it. I'll show you a photo just afterwards, as it was a year ago. But this room, like all the other rooms in the chateau, had been infiltrated by water, threatening structures, shoring up the ceilings and the headers of the fireplaces. And this problem had repercussions right through to the roof structure. When we renovated the chateau, we sorted out all these structural problems, which allowed me, behind the scenes, to start work on the interior. So here we had fun rediscovering the original fabric. There was a 19th century wallpaper, there was an 18th century fabric, and of course we chose the oldest model, and for me, the most beautiful, which is the bird fabric, which has retained its original patina. It's a real movie set, since we started with a photo, a 1 square meter element that was a little damaged but salvageable. From this high-definition photo, we entrusted it to a workshop in Paris that prints the photo we want on large format fabric. We can print a background, a landscape, whatever we want, and we reproduced it identically. So we kept the stains. See here, for example, there was a wallpaper that was glued to this fabric afterwards. This wallpaper left traces of glue and mildew. But on the whole, it's not a problem. It just looks like an old fabric, but it's brand new. And it allowed us to completely recreate the original decor of this living room. The woodwork was salvaged on site, doors were missing, we redid them, we applied patinas so they wouldn't show. The few original colors were preserved. Where we redid the lower part of the room with new woodwork, we had to call in a decor painter who applied patinas to make the room look as if it had never moved. Again, the aim was to show a chateau that was in its original state, but which had not been stripped from cellar to attic and redone from A to Z. The aim of restoring a chateau is to show things that are real, not to mark time with a restoration that's much too strong. I think so. Here you can see some of the furniture. We'll be opening to the public in a month. We're still working on it in the dust, but there's some beautiful furniture that I managed to buy with a small budget every winter. And this furniture will go here and there, in the large living room and in this room, and in the few rooms on the ground floor that have been restored. I'll now show you a photo of the room we're in. Only a year ago, this room was restored 11 months ago. Since the first year Vaux was open to the public in 2015, we couldn't visit these rooms because they were in very poor condition. There were structures holding back the ceilings. But we opened the cellars, which we restored with a team of volunteers who helped out in the early years, And we're going to take a look at these beautiful cellars, still in their original state, marking an important period when there were many servants in these grand houses. Getting into the cellars is a real technique, since here there was a heart that served as a ventilation system for the kitchens, which allows me to put my arm through. And with the castle key, I'm going to open the inner lock. Obviously, I'm showing you how to storm a castle. Here are the kitchens that had been shown in previous videos, but which have evolved a little since we buy new items every year. There are also people from the region who donate old copper saucepans and cooking pots that were found in farms and castles during the Ancien Régime. All these decorations were brought back because when I bought the chateau, all the basements and rooms had been vandalized, so everything of any value had been taken. And so, apart from the cooking piano, we brought everything back here. It's a testimony to the way life was at that time, and especially to the number of people who could work, because in the kitchens, you can see the space there is. There were around 6 people working full-time until the 30s to prepare dishes, to process game meat from the meadows, as this is cattle breeding land here, and in Vaux, it's actually quite nice. We explain it a lot to school children when they come to visit us. It's a way of realizing just how self-sufficient we can be, since everything here is done to transform the products of the land, hunting and breeding. We'll go next door to see the other rooms. So here we've gone through the kitchen and then the Souillard. Now we come to the bakery. Normally there were bakeries in every chateau, but here there were 3 bread ovens in one place. There are 7 bread ovens on the estate because in those days bread was baked very early every morning, and here there were 3 ovens dedicated to the house and the master's or servant's table, but everyone had to eat fresh bread. So here we have little ovens in their 18th century state, which I hope one day to restore. For the moment, they're a beautiful backdrop. Here we come to the butcher's shop, a room that served as a kind of storeroom for meat and other processed goods. We've put back the original tiles we found next door, and we've straightened this half-timbered wall with old wooden planks. It's funny because I realize that when you do a restoration project using local materials, you work in much the same way as people did in the old days. In other words, you take what's closest, what's simplest, and try to find a way to restore it. Here, this half-timbered wall had collapsed, and we reclad it with old oak I had in a shed, which allowed me to recover all the load that was coming down on me. We put in the old fittings and blocked off the wall with a decor that was certainly not what it was at the time, but which looks good in the room. Here we moved on a little past the kitchens. We've now reached the cellars, and we realized when we took over Vaux that this was a place where a lot of wine was stored. But when I say a lot, I really mean a lot, and that's why we discovered that there was a production at that time. There were about 10 hectares of vines, and we've recovered plenty of scenery to show this wine growing past in the lesser-known part of the Champagne region, which is called Aube. Here we've drawn inspiration from all these settings, including the kitchens, the future Grand Salon, and all the rooms. There are 20 rooms to visit in a sort of escape game. I call it a murder escape because you have to get out of the chateau in an hour, during which time you have to find clues in each room. Here there are bottles with dates on them. You have to see which of these bottles is the least full to get the right vintage, which will give you an indication of the date of either the crime or the case to be solved. These are all really old settings. These are old cases of Champagne. For instance, we have some Ayala or Moet and Chandon. And next door, you see we have a little backstore in which the apothecary works. And for the nocturnes, it allows us to put actors on stage for plays like this one, for example. They make a potion, an elixir, something. The rooms in the chateau are simply sets. We've tried to restore them, but also to make the most of these very beautiful rooms which provide clues and objects so that everything blends into the background and people feel like they're entering a film set. and there are no restrictions. They're allowed to touch everything. Sometimes it's complicated because we have to tidy up on August evenings when we've had 300 visitors. But it allows people to break down the barriers that exist between a classic visit to a chateau and this one, where you have the chateau being restored, a work of art in which people can participate, and also an hour or two of play with a family who are going to have a good time, because there are very few prohibitions precisely. Here we are at the rear of the chateau. This is a fairly new part, because here, since I arrived, there have been barriers to prevent visitors from discovering the facade, which was on the verge of collapsing. Here we had a huge wooden scaffold that had been in place since the 60s and which held up the entire central body, which was completely empty from cellar to attic. It acted both as interior shoring, holding up the framework, and as facade braces. The key was to prevent the whole thing from collapsing. Now we've redone the stoop, the facades are finished, and the small paned yellow windows are finished. We put some gravel as a result. Last week we redecorated, as you can see, creating a new space where visitors can really contemplate the architecture and facades. We'll be putting in benches for people to stroll around and enjoy this English-style park, which is a very beautiful place. We've just come through 4 months of very long winter with a lot of work, a lot of ideas, a lot of projects that are being implemented today. If you want to see more, you can come and visit us in Vaux. It's a castle open to all, open to the public from May 1st to November 1st every year, with different opening times, usually Wednesdays and weekends, and in July and August, from morning to evening, even into the night, we're open every day. When you come to visit Vaux, you'll see for yourself the work that has been done, and above all, the work that remains to be done, since all these rooms are open to the public.